thing I want to do is I want to thank Mayor Mike of Montvale, who's running for Congress, for allowing us to use his campaign headquarters and so generously providing us with the beer and the sweets, which is very generous of him. So if everybody could just please give Mayor Mike a round of applause. Now we're going to be going over a lot of stuff, obviously all very important to our rights, but before we get into that, one thing I do want to mention to everybody. We have a big fight on our hands to get our 2A rights recognized properly in New Jersey. We need people who can defend those rights. To do that, we need to make the right decisions in an election. We need people who aren't afraid to say that they're a gun owner, that they support the Second Amendment, that they support our right to be able to defend ourselves from tyranny. That's Mayor Mike. Just like there's a swamp in DC, you all know there's a swamp here in New Jersey. And a lot of it is actually within this own party. A lot of those guys don't want to see Mike get elected because he will do the right thing. He will back the Second Amendment. He will do all the things those guys aren't happy with. So, in addition to the resolutions, everyone in Mike's congressional district, I'd like you, when you get home over the next couple of weeks, to go to your elected officials, to go to your county committeemen, and say the only person you want representing you in Congress is Mayor Mike. And the reason why is because he's the only person who has publicly come out on our page and said he supports the Second Amendment. In less than 24 hours, when we needed a place to hold this meeting, he jumped up and said, the place is yours. You don't see that from too many politicians. Most politicians will ask you, how much can you give me? He said, what can I do for you? How can I help? I'm a gun owner. It's important. We have to defend our rights. That's the man we need in Washington. That's the man we need helping our president. So remember that. We need to fight for our rights. To fight for our rights, we need the right guys in Washington. To do that, you need to let your county committeemen know if they don't back Mayor Mike in the convention, you don't back them on the next vote. It's that simple. There is only one issue voting from now on. It's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not school buses, it's not do we get an extra tree in town. It's who supports the Second Amendment. If they don't, I don't care what party they're in, you don't vote for them. And you make it clear to them. We've become a one-issue voting block because this is what most politicians think. You don't care. And in New Jersey, they really, really think that because in a little bit, Marcus here is going to discuss with you the whole host of infringements they're ready to throw at us. So, why are we here? We're here mostly for these resolutions. This is step one. We want to send these resolutions out to every single town and county in New Jersey. Cape May County has passed the resolution, so it's doable. Towns are passing it. Here's the important thing. We live in Bergen County. If so much as 5 towns pass this resolution here in Bergen County, everything changes. There's a rule in politics. So goes Bergen, so goes the state. Everybody in Trenton will suddenly hear what we're talking about if Bergen County starts shifting. If we start voting out guys like Josh Grotheimer, like our current freeholder board. I have a gentleman here who sent one of these resolutions to the freeholder board. I'm going to ask him to stand up and speak about that right now. If that gentleman could stand up and mention it.
Well, I
Here he
sent
is.
it to all the freeholders. I got one answer back from Thomas J. Sullivan. And it was basically, thanks for reaching out, but I don't see where the Second Amendment has been affected in New Jersey at all. I posted it and they reposted it. And recently I posted a list of all the laws and the amendments that they are trashing on his freeholder Facebook page. He didn't put it up, but he responded to me and said, thank you for reaching out and keeping me informed. My note was, it was very discouraging and disturbing that a lawmaker in Trenton doesn't know what's going on. And I also invited him here today. Mr. Sullivan, you here? Yeah, no, I didn't think so. And he lives in Montvale, so it wouldn't have been a far ride for him. So there you have it. That's what we're up against.
So this is why we're saying we have to become a one-issue voting block. Sullivan, a career politician, a man who makes backroom deals at your expense, on your tax dollar, says, for me, but not for thee. Do you know how many Democrat legislators, judges, lawyers, and various other politicians have concealed carry permits in this state? Every single person, pretty much. I won't say every single one, but a good majority of the people who aren't police officers, who have a permit to carry, are somehow involved as a lawyer, a judge, or a politician. Why is it okay for them and not for us? Well, that's right, because they see themselves as our masters. They see themselves as above us. On election day, it's time to remind every politician in the state, regardless of party, they work for us. We're in charge. And the Constitution guarantees us certain rights. Not rights given to us by a guy, not rights given to us by a government, rights given to us by God. And that's a scary word for a lot of the guys on the left. They hate God, because that means there's something bigger than them in a government. But guns are probably the most important thing in a government for citizens to have. Because if you don't have a gun, you know what you are? A subject. That's all you are. I'm going to make that real clear on how I know that so well. My father's family escaped Cuba. My cousin tried to fight the communists. They didn't have enough guns. My cousin spent 18 years in one of Fidel Castro's torture chambers. 18 years getting beat, hit, starved, not even given clothes for a stretch of years. The men who were with him were so inhumanely treated that Andy Garcia made a documentary about it a few years ago. That's what happens when you don't have guns. The government can do whatever they want. All of a sudden, we're hearing gun confiscation, gun regulation. What has happened in the last 200 years that suddenly the government thinks that they're going to do that they don't want us to have guns for? It's a little scary. That's why we're here. We're here to protect our rights. Because we're not the English, we're not Cuba, and we're definitely not Venezuela, where over the course of 20 years of losing their guns, they went into full, out-of-control dictatorship. 20 years, think about that. In 20 years, they turned into a dictatorship because they didn't have access to firearms. So when the government says you don't need it, not only do you probably need it, you probably need two of them. So in that vein, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus, who's going to go over the laws that are coming up next.
I'm not going to mince any words here, and I'm not going to waste your time telling you guys how important this is. The fact that you're here means that you already know how important this is. Which brings us to the next step, knowing what is actually going on, because there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of cops who think they know. There are some cops who know, but there's a lot more cops who think they know. There are gun store employees who think they know. There are the guys at your local range who think they know. There are the self-proclaimed patriots who think they know. A lot of people think they know, but a lot of people think Romeo and Juliet is a romantic story. Anyone who actually read the play knows that it was about a guy who liked one girl one day, liked a different girl the next, and it led to 6 people dying. If you haven't read the play, that's the plot. Anyone who tells you it's romantic read the title. A lot of people like to see these bills, they read the title, not the bill. I don't care what the title says, you need to read the bill for 2 reasons. Number one, when people read the title, they assume they know what's in the bill, just like they assume that Romeo and Juliet is a romantic story, which means that either they'll A, right, number one, speak about something that's not actually being pushed. And when they say, hey, and one of the bills I'm going to get to is a 50 cal bill, and I'll give you several examples in that one, but when they say, hey, this is what's going to happen, and the legislator says, well, his concerns were already addressed in the bill, so I guess there's no problem if we pass it. When meanwhile, there was other actual concerns that you didn't realize because you only read the title, or you listened to the guy at the gun range, or the cop, or the patriot. Issue number 2 is even worse. When they see that you're wrong, they will say, these idiots don't know what they're talking about, ignore them. And that's what's been happening in New Jersey, and we all know it. So having said that, I'm going to go through a few bills here I'm not gonna go through the whole list. The list is very exhaustive. I'm gonna go through what we as a group consider to be some of the most egregious bills and tell you why they are egregious regardless of what you actually think is going on. Some bills that look worse than they are, some bills that look better than they are, and why each one is a problem. First bill that I'm going to address is A1234, 1234, would require completion of a firearms education program to get an initial firearms purchase card and permit to buy a handgun. The problem with this bill should be obvious to everyone. Once in a while, the title gets it right. They are putting a prerequisite on your constitutional rights. Imagine if I said that you had to have a prerequisite to exercise your First Amendment right to speech or religion. Or how about your Fourth Amendment right? Well, you have to take this class, and until then, the cops can go into your house and look at whatever they want and take whatever they want without a warrant. No other constitutional right is subject to prerequisites. This one should not be either. There's no reason I should have to pay $200 to take a class from somebody who may or may not be qualified, and let's be honest, we all know that one instructor out there who's not qualified, and then I can exercise my rights. That's bogus, and we all know it. Next, A1255 would allow places of worship to allow one person to carry a firearm during services. This looks like they're giving us a gift. This is the biggest Trojan horse on the list. What it does is A, it allows one person, and only one person, from the entire church, synagogue, mosque, what have you, to carry a gun. And if, God forbid, that person is sick on the day that the shooter shows up, well, we gave you the one guy. And then when we say, hey, how come the rest of us can't carry? They'll also say, well, we gave you the one guy. This is a Trojan horse. It's designed to placate and pacify us. Make no mistake, this is a bill that is working 1,000% against you. It also happens to screw Orthodox Jews for other reasons, but we're not going to get into that right now. Talking about driving to the synagogue on Saturday. A1280 would change the definition of destructive device to include weapons of .50 caliber or greater. This is the one that everybody gets wrong because they don't read it. I've heard people in the last couple of weeks, this would ban your shotgun, it does not ban your shotgun. This would ban your muzzle loader, it does not ban your muzzle loader. When I say shotgun, rifled slug gun or smoothbore. When I say muzzle loader, cap lock, flintlock, inline muzzle loader, 6-shot cap revolver. None of these would be banned under this bill. 50 Beowulf, not banned under this bill. 500 Smith & Wesson, not banned under this bill. 500 Nitro Express, 577 Nitro Express, not banned under this bill. So before anyone lets you say at the gun store, at the shooting range, the Patriots online, will tell you this bans this, that, and the other thing, and then they come up with these excuses of why. Because the title says .50 caliber. The title is not the law. The law reads, or rather the bill that they're trying to pass into law reads, which shall include any metric equivalent of .50 caliber or greater that is capable of firing a projectile that attains a muzzle energy of 12,000 foot-pounds or greater, etc., 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 or any weapon that is capable of firing a projectile that attains a muzzle energy of 12,000 foot-pounds or greater, regardless of caliber. So in it, they say 50 cals above 12,000, and then, oh, by the way, anything above 12,000. What that basically means is, in the text of the bill, they make caliber irrelevant. The only thing that counts is muzzle energy. Anyone here owns a Barrett, a Macmillan TAC 50? Anyone know anyone who owns a Barrett or a Macmillan TAC 50?
Has anyone gone to Gun for Hire and fired the BMG?
This is what they're talking about. Now, originally, this bill passed out in California, and someone thought he was real clever. He came up with a $4.99. And it worked in California. New Jersey caught on, and they said anything with 12,000 foot-pounds, even if it's less than 50 cal, which would also ban the $4.99. In other words, in plain English, this has nothing to do with caliber and everything to do with muzzle energy. Now, the worst part of this is another one of these Trojan horse bills is that 99% of us don't own that gun. Why? It is prohibitively expensive. A Barrett runs upwards of 10 grand brand new out of the box. A Macmillan TAC 50 is somewhere between 35 and 4,500. You can get the AR 50 for around $1,000, $2,000. And then it's expensive to shoot. It's $8, $9, $10 a round. That's a $50 group. So why the hell do I give a damn? Well, it's very simple. We've seen them try to ban the specific bullets of the FN-57 caliber. They already have almost a full ban on hollow points. Not quite. You can own them in your house, but that's pretty much it. Now they're trying to start at the top and work their way down, while at the same time at the 5.7 they're trying to work their way at the bottom and go up. And they say there's no slippery slope. Well, this is already step 2. Step 1 says 60 cal. Step 2 says 50, even though we know it's not. They also said there's no slippery slope when they passed a 15-round mag limit. How well did that work out for us? They're going to come at it from both sides till the end. The only thing you can own is a 30-06 180 grain soft point, because that is so awesome for home defense. So that, I hope, answers the question of, I don't own a Barrett, why the hell do I care? I hope that answers that question. Next bill, A 1292 would require a second form of identification when buying ammunition. It would also require dealers to maintain records of ammunition sales and report them to the state. How many people like the government tracking what they spend their money on? So we're all in agreement that the government should not be tracking how much ammo I buy? And God forbid somebody buys a number that ends with a 0 or 2 zeros or 3 zeros worth of ammunition. You bought 1,000 rounds. Which school are you planning on shooting up? Well, there's an IDPA match this weekend. Bullshit! Which school are you shooting up? No, seriously, there's an IDPA match this weekend. We all know where this is headed.
I don't know anyone who doesn't buy ammo in bulk. If you don't,
If you don't, you're wasting too much money, and I'm too Jewish for
Oh,
that.
brick of 500 rounds, or
I mean,
2 bricks.
exactly.
You have an arsenal.
9mm, just something simple and easy.
Well,
250 for 1,000 rounds.
Not even 2 bricks of 22 LR,
You know,
and you have an arsenal.
Right, that's what
Every
you said.
single time you order bulk in 22 LR, you're looking at 5,000 rounds. There's no, it's either you bought 10 or you bought 5,000. There's not a middle number. And they know that. That's why they never tell you what caliber of bullet they pick up in their arsenal lists.
Well, we saw on the news about 6 months ago, the question was always, how many guns does it need to be an arsenal? Guy was picked up with 2 guns and 1,000 rounds, and they said arsenal. So that's the number, guys, 2. 2 is the arsenal.
We're all in trouble. Especially
if you can find where my boat sank.
And you're all in a lot of trouble if they find out the real number that none of you told your wives about.
You're really in trouble.
Listen, for $5 extra, we'll include a second receipt that
wives are
says
gone,
exactly what you
guns
told your
stay.
wife you spent. Meanwhile, the ATF is wondering why Ed and all his buddies are such terrible boaters. A 1666, that's 1666, would prohibit all sales of ammunition that are not handled in person through a dealer. What that means in English is you can't buy ammo online. Why is this a big deal? Well, number one, we just talked about bulk savings. Number two, anyone here familiar with a 27 Nosler? Came out in the last 5 years or so? Right? Long range, high ballistic coefficient round that does not get sold at Ramsey Outdoor? Anyone familiar with a 300 prick precision rifle cartridge? Right? That does not get sold at Ramsey Outdoor?
I work there, so yeah, I know. We don't say that.
This is not a dig at you, it just happens to be the nearest place.
Fine, that's the thing.
Look, I can name any other gun store in New Jersey. No one sells the 300 prick or the 27 Nosler. 577 Nitro Express, invented roughly, I believe, 1898. Elephant gun. Anyone know where you can pick that up in Jersey? Well, I can get it in about a dozen spots online within 30 seconds, but now I can't because, hey, you have to go through a point of contact. And we know that there's not a store in New Jersey that's not going to capitalize on that. Hey, ship your ammo here, $20 a transfer. A 1833 would outlaw imitation firearms that resemble real ones. In other words,
There goes your airsoft guns.
there goes your airsoft guns, there goes your paintball guns, and this is really the level of thought crime. For those of you who have not read 1984, thought crime is the crime before the crime where I think I'm gonna go do something that the government doesn't like, right? I haven't yet killed anyone, but I'm considering it, that's thought crime. Here, I can't do anything, with a toy gun, but they're gonna ban it anyway. Why? Because it's thought crime.
Anybody here play Cowboys and Indians when they were a kid?
Better question, anyone here not?
Yeah. Well, they want to make sure the next generation is so weak and so brainwashed that even the idea of looking at a gun scares them. Have you ever met some of these guys who grew up on the other side of the ocean? Especially some of the English guys. I've met some English folks. They see a gun and it's like showing a little kid candy for the first time. They're amazed by a real life gun. They're looking, what is that? How did you get one? Our cops can't even have one.
Have you
That's
met
what they
some
want
people
to
here
us.
that are petrified of it just from what they've heard? Until you actually get them in a range and try shooting.
That's the greatest thing in the world. I think we all know that. You take that person who's never held a gun, you bring them to the range, all of a sudden those misconceptions for a lot of people wash away. It's like, wow, this is fun. Why was I scared of this? It happened with my wife. She's like, I don't think I like a gun. I don't think I could shoot a gun. I think it's too powerful for me. Next thing I know, she's shooting way too many rounds on my 9mm, and I have to buy more ammo, and I didn't tell her how much it cost.
Nice,
Are they gonna
thanks.
ban high capacity super soaker water pistols too?
Yes, because that's an assault super soaker.
Bloomberg will, anything over 32 ounces. You can have two 16 ounces, you know, so you can have double holster.
A347 would make anyone on a federal terrorist watch list a prohibited person. Now, I have to look at this. I could be misremembering. I thought Christie signed this already. Having said that, whether he signed it or not is irrelevant, really, because how do you get on a terrorist watch list?
Nobody knows.
Somebody calls up the FBI and says, I don't like
You
what that guy's
can't
doing.
get off it.
How do you get off a terrorist watch list? Nobody knows.
You gotta find out you're on it first.
How do you find out you're on it?
You go to the
I
airport.
tried to fly.
Here's the scary thing. People have been put on this watch list because they had the same name as somebody else.
Yeah.
If any of you remember the old show Boston Legal, they actually made a whole episode of that where William Shatner's character couldn't take an airplane because he had the same name as a terrorist. It was kind of weird. It's kind of funny, but here's the scary part. It's true. They'll just take, hey, he has the same name. Well, you popped up on the watch list.
Well, that's what happened to Senator Kennedy. He was the same name with some IRA terrorists, and he couldn't fly. And he said, but I'm a senator. Doesn't matter, your name's on the list.
Now, we're all pretty sure Senator Kennedy magically got taken off the list, but what do you think?
I'm
you
pretty
are
sure he
outside?
is a terrorist.
That's a whole nother issue. I'm sure there's a lot of young ladies who would agree with you on that.
They can't talk for themselves anymore.
Well, they're at the bottom of a lake.
So, besides for the fact that there's infinite ways to get on, virtually no way to get off, this flies completely in the face of burden of proof. Before you can take away any of my rights, you have to go to court and show that the burden of proof is on the person taking away the rights, not the person trying to get them back. This flies in the face of that 1000%. This is one of the few bills that even the, what's that liberal civil rights group called?
ACLU.
The ACLU said was a terrible idea. And we know that they don't believe, when Heller was ruled on in 2008, the ACLU said, no, we're not gonna defend it because we disagree with the ruling. And even they said that this one bill goes too far.
When we can agree with the ACLU, you know something.
You know whoever's
is
on the other side
terribly
is
wrong.
right. Now we're going into Senate bills. Some of these are similar. S-103 would change the definition of destructive device to include weapons of 50 cal. We already discussed. It's actually weapons, firearms of 12,000 foot-pound muzzle energy or greater. S-557 would impose a 2.5% tax on firearms and a 10% tax on ammunition. We're talking a sales tax. Currently, and the reason they think they can get away with this, there is what's known as a Pittman-Robertson Act on the books. It's a federal law. There is a 10% tax on guns, 11% tax on ammo. It means every gun that you buy in any gun store in New Jersey or any online store, et cetera, already has this worked into the price. You're paying a tax whether you realize it or not. This tax was invented by hunters for hunters. It's designed to go directly back to conservation efforts. I have mixed feelings about it, but my personal feelings are irrelevant. What they're doing now is they're using that precedent to say it's okay to tax guns more and more and more. They'll start it at 2.5 and 10, and it'll go up and up and up. And we saw this in Seattle, they've tried to do it, and people from Seattle just go outside of Seattle into the suburbs and buy their ammo there. And then all of a sudden they're like, how come we haven't collected any money on this tax? Well, I wonder why. Meanwhile, the issue with this is, again, we are talking about a constitutional right. The left loves to ignore the fact that it's a constitutional right. They just think it's our opinion versus their opinion. Well, it's actually not. It's our opinion and the Constitution versus their opinion. See, you know, that's that trump card. Oh, you can't use that word. That's that ace in the hole that they don't like, that we have. It's in the Constitution. This is a fundamental right in the Bill of Rights. And before they say, well, who says we can't tax a right? Ask them about the history of poll tax that their party passed. Okay? And then ask them how they would feel if we taxed $1,000 for each of their abortions. Then see how much they think about taxing constitutional rights.
So flat out, it's a conservative tax. How dare you not vote with us and get something we don't like, we're gonna tax you for it. Oh, and don't forget, in New Jersey, we're gonna raise your tax on gas every 5 minutes. Because,
That long?
yeah, about that long.
I thought it was
Oh,
about-
and don't forget, when other state leaders asked to see where that money from that tax was going, they were told no. The people aren't allowed to see where the tax money's going for the transportation department. So what do you think the odds are of us knowing what they're gonna do with the taxes are from firearms and ammunition? So even if they say, oh, it's gonna go towards this or that, we know it's not gonna go towards this or that. It's gonna go towards hot tubs and jacuzzis and whatever else they wanna spend down in Trenton.
It's gonna go straight to anti-gun think tanks.
Bingo. Because it all gets rooted through different angles, and they just keep funneling themselves through a different degree. And they're using your tax dollars to do it.
What's interesting is that they're also using this as behavior modification. Now, they'll tell you that a tax is never behavior modification, and we all know that it's bogus. That's why they tax cigarettes, try to get you to quit. At least allegedly. It could just be because they know that you're addicted, so you'll pay whatever the tax is anyway. But having said that, we know that there are direct results of when they tax things, people buy less. When they tax things less, people buy more. Even the Democrats in Trenton know that. That's why they passed, and people hate it when I call it this, the Ghetto tax break. Buy a computer in Paramus. What's your percentage on tax? 6 and whatever? 6.3, 6 and a quarter, 6 and 3/8?
6.625.
Oh, so 6 and 5/8. 6 and 5/8.
Go to Micro Center.
Go to Micro Center in Patterson, 5 minutes down the road.
3%.
3%.
Why do you think PC Richards has their super warehouse down past exit 15 on the turnpike? It's 3% sales tax for your big screen TV all of a sudden. So who are they helping? Are they helping the poor? No, they're helping a couple of companies who were smart enough to put a second center there. And sometimes some companies who have multiple locations will even tell you, yeah, buy it here and go pick it up there. We'll charge you less tax. So who are they helping? They're actually cheating themselves and think you're too dumb to realize it.
But a lot of people don't know cause and effect.
Because a lot of people don't want to. That's the scary part. We have to wake everyone up to that.
Well, if you could think past
I
step
don't know,
1
it's
into
not that they
steps
don't
2,
want
3,
to,
and
a lot
4.
of it's ignorance.
Well, no, I'm saying if you were able to think past step 1 towards steps 2, 3, and 4, you wouldn't vote Democrat. That's just look at any Democrat policy, and it always stops at step 1. We'll raise minimum wage, people get more money. You're literally raising the price of milk because now the guy who owns the bodega has to charge more for the milk to pay that guy. That's step 2. They don't think that far.
Here's the crazy thing, guys. This is a nonpartisan issue. This is a nonpartisan group. But how great would it be if we didn't have to argue with it on a party level? We want the Democrats to come on board so that we don't have to fight with them over guns. We should be fighting with them over stupid things like tree taxes and that kind of crap. We should all be on the same page when it comes to the Second Amendment and the military and things like that. We shouldn't have a division between parties on constitutional rights. This isn't a Democrat or Republican issue because we are a nonpartisan group. It's just, not maybe so much in parts of South Jersey, but really, really aggressively here, it has become a sided issue, sadly. where we do see more Republicans supporting the Second Amendment. And I say it like that specifically because I say more Republicans, not all Republicans, because you're gonna see a lot of Republicans who are not like Mayor Mike over there, who won't support the Second Amendment. And the best way to find out who that is, there's a lot of resources. After the primaries are over this year, we're gonna be sending out questionnaires to all the candidates who are gonna be running. And it's gonna be real easy. We're not gonna do the A, B, C, D, E, F like the NRA does. We're not gonna give everybody that much wiggle room. It's gonna be pass, fail, and better than the other guy. That's simple. It's gonna be 3 options. They either passed, failed, or they failed but were better than the other guy, or passed but were better than the other guy. You're gonna ask them 4 questions, real simple stuff. And if they can't pass that, you're gonna know. And you're gonna know flat out, this is not somebody who cares about your rights. So,
I think one of your problems with that, and you say Republican, there's a lot of Republican gun owners, and we call them FUDs.
yup,
Okay, because, well, nobody needs that. What they can't understand is once they're not gonna stop with that. So once they get the AR, and then they get the semi-auto shotgun, then they're coming for the bolt actions, and the
Well, that's a
pump,
sniper rifle.
and the single
Yep.
action. So it's never gonna stop, and trying to get them to understand that, you're chipping away constantly. I'm a gun owner since the 80s. We have never gained an inch.
That's right.
We've continued to compromise, give back. Oh, we'll give this to get that. And I'm talking about the state organizations. It's always don't make waves. And I can tell you, gun stores are some of the biggest FUDs. He was with me. Bob's Little Sports Shop. During the Sweeney recall. Jay and I, one other guy, went in there. And we heard right from the sun, because we were not welcome in that gun store.
huh,
We don't make waves. Sweeney is our guy. When we have a problem, we can go to him. What did they dangle? The pistol permit. I said, dude, I've been hearing that for years. For years. They wanted nothing to do with it. Sweeney, if you think Bob's Little Sport Shop and some of these guys, they make money off of it, but they do not support it.
that's right.
Okay? And that's what you have to get people need to understand, and especially in the hunting world, and I'm a hunter, and I can't tell you how it burns my ass that these guys, all they care about is opening day. Get more involved.
Yup,
You have to. And you have to get it through to their head somehow that you wake up. Because it's not just about the pump shotgun. It's not about the bolt action rifle. They're coming for it. Right after they get this. And how do you get a conversation when somebody doesn't want to hear it?
well, and that's,
You know?
that's the biggest issue. And that's why I say we have to become a one-issue voting bloc. It's full, unrestricted Second Amendment rights. There is no, we're gonna work with you on this, we're gonna give up this. No. What part of shall not be infringed is unclear. Washington was pretty clear on it. Why was he clear on it? I don't know, maybe he just fought a war with an oppressive government, so he understood the need for citizens to have firearms. And everybody says, oh, but that won't happen here. Yes, it will. They said that in Venezuela. 20 years later, it happened there. What do they think? Suddenly, magically, AR-15s are gonna drop out of the sky if the government becomes oppressive? The funniest thing is the same
Yes.
people who will,
Yes.
that is probably what they think.
No, they say, you don't need a gun now, wait till the government gets oppressive. Oh, and it's too late.
And here's the strangest thing, the same people who are accusing the current administration of being
Nazis.
this, that, Nazis, fascists, robots, Russians, Ukrainians, whatever this week's new buzzword is,
Or being the fascists.
that's who they want to give the guns to. They want to give it to the government. So they literally want to give their guns to the guy who they say is a fascist. So their thought process hasn't gone very far. The weird thing is, if I was a liberal and I thought the government was fascist, I'd want a lot more guns and a lot better rights on it. So they really just say things, to scare people. The first step of that is not just talking to those, for lack of a better word, FUDs like you used. We have to get the young people involved. Because in your schools, right now in public schools, in a lot of books, it doesn't say the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. They put little sub-paragraphs in saying, up to government decision. And then they start teaching the kids, well, that's really just for the military and militias. Well, they don't want to explain what a militia is. A militia is a bunch of guys who got angry one day, showed up and threw a bunch of tea into a harbor and then had to fight the English. Or that same militia worked under President Andrew Jackson because we didn't have an active military to a full extent and had to back the active military when he fought down in New Orleans. So without those guns, we can't have a militia. We can't have a defense. We can't be ready for something. And if you go back, 60 years into history, World War II, why didn't the Japanese invade after Pearl Harbor?
I don't know what year you think it is.
About 56 years since then, World War II.
60 years ago was 1960.
All right, I'll let the Jewish guy do the math.
We're all still in the 90s, man.
You know,
Stuck in the 90s.
I miss Bush. That sounds horrible. So you go back to World War II. The Japanese have actually stated why they didn't invade. They were afraid of every hunter and crazy guy with a gun in a shack somewhere in Midwest America, because they knew they'd have to go through California and then through the Midwest. They didn't see their ground troops surviving an encounter with the American citizenry. They didn't even consider our military at that point. They were still figuring out how to get past the citizens. That says something. That says we're defended. The biggest army in the world is the American gun owner. If something was to happen, God forbid, the American gun owner is here to defend the country. Why does the government want to change something that's a backup plan? That's what the founders intended. You only take away guns from people you want to oppress. That's it.
The other thing is you have to watch out for the double talk. You'll often hear, well, the Second Amendment really is only for a militia. Heller got rid of that. It was really intended for the militia. You need to be in a militia. Then you say, what about the militia that went down to Richmond? Oh, those guys are psycho. Oh, so not that militia. Which militia are you talking about? The militia that runs it with flowers? Come on.
Something else, unfortunately, you have to worry about too is the gun owner that relocates and says, oh, just move to a free state. Just move to a free state. Pennsylvania is very solidly purple.
It's on the edge of going.
Yep.
And
Eastern Pennsylvania will turn that state blue.
I lived in
Texas is
Vermont,
getting there.
what they did there.
in Virginia,
One fell
completely
swoop,
flipped.
signed
Yep.
everything.
Well, that's
One
because
seat in
every
Virginia
idiot
changed
Democrat who
everything.
retires from New York and then bitches about the taxes he voted for goes down to Texas or Pennsylvania or Florida and votes for those same idiot taxes.
Yep.
It's a ghetto syndrome.
Which is why.
That's what it's called. It's a ghetto syndrome because you moved out of this, but you take that idea back here and you turn that into where you just came from, because it's a ghetto syndrome.
Which is why eventually there's not gonna be any place to
Safe place
flee
to go.
to unless you fight here. And you fight where you are.
And you can fight that in this state by saying, use the tax issue. That's I'm as staunch 2A as it can be. We have a huge tax problem in this state. And I said this on a post the other day when somebody questioned something. If you vote out the same politician that's about raising your taxes, you're voting out the anti-gun politician. They're one and the same. Talk to anybody about property tax and they get livid. Talk to them about a gun issue? Nah, I don't care. I don't need that. I don't want that. How's your property tax? Friggin' killing me. Well, stop voting for this person. And, you vote out Weinberg, you vote out the most anti-gun politician in Bergen County. And in the state.
Weinberg would have retired a dozen years ago, but her husband lost everything with Madoff, so she has to stay working.
Regardless of that, but I'm just saying, you use their psychology.
Yeah, she's gotta
You
pay
know?
for her son's mental health.
Use
bills,
this,
too.
and you get
Yeah, we didn't help that.
You know?
issue when that-
But then again, like you said earlier, get the right politician in there. Somebody who totally supports it, not the rhinos that we have in New Jersey,
Exactly.
All right, so moving right along, as long as we're talking about taxing gun owners, S558 would increase the fee for a firearm purchase card from $5 to $100. The cost of a handgun purchase permit from $2 to $50. That means every time you go out for another handgun, it's another $50 on top of whatever that gun costs. Now all of a sudden your little, what the left likes to call Saturday night specials and what the rest of us call subcompacts that costs $250 or $300 now get into the realm of $350 or $400. Just another way to tax people you don't like. Because we've never fought a war over that, you know, tax thing. S747 would expand the definition of assault firearm to include many common semi-auto firearms, which is very similar to the next bill, S98, which would basically do the same thing with a couple of extra caveats. They both lower the test from a 2-feature test to a 1-feature test. For those of you who don't know what this means, if you have a semi-automatic rifle with a removable magazine, there is a list of 5 features as it stands right now. You are allowed to have 1 of those 5. A 2-feature test means when you hit 2 of those features, your gun becomes illegal. They're going to go down to a 1-feature test, meaning when you have 1 of those features, the gun becomes illegal. 5 features as of right now are a collapsible or telescoping or folding stock, a bayonet lug, because the drive-by bayonettings in Patterson have been killing way too many children. A flash hider, because God forbid you turn into a ninja. A grenade launcher, because the grenades in Patterson have been killing children. And the vertical pistol grip. For most of the guns that we buy in Jersey, like our AR-15s, it is the vertical pistol grip. On a couple of guns, let's say if you get yourself an M14, or as they call it, an M1A, so that's gonna be your flash hider because it has just a standard stock. It doesn't have a vertical pistol grip. They're gonna lower that to a 1-feature test. If anyone out here ever saw a California or New York legal AR-15 with the horse leg stock, that's what we're talking about. It's gonna get rid of that pistol grip. Having said that, they also add other features. S747 takes bayonet lugs off the list because they realize how ridiculous it sounds and replaces it with a forward vertical grip, the gangster grip as it's known. That's the vertical foregrip that sits on the Picatinny rail underneath your AR. S98 does not get rid of bayonet lug, adds the pistol grip, the vertical foregrip, and also adds a muzzle brake. As it stands right now, you cannot have a threaded barrel or a flash hider. To get around that, we all just pin and weld a muzzle brake. This gets rid of that by getting rid of flash hiders and muzzle brakes. So we go from a 2-feature test to a 1-feature test. The caveat with all these features is that if I get rid of that second, that passenger side rear view mirror, I'm still driving a V8, right? This doesn't make anyone safer. The guy who comes into the school to shoot up the school, the guy who comes into the synagogue, the church, whatever, to shoot that up, everything is identical. He just twists his wrist from here to here. So much safer. So we have to basically make them aware of that. One of the things that they always talk about is how fast can the guy reload, right? 10-round mag limits. How fast can the guy reload? Well, if he has to hold it this way, if he has to hold it this way. And to anyone who says that to you, there are 2 things that I like to point out. A guy walks in, and I'm in New Jersey, so I can't carry. I'm starting to run the other way. I have to, A, realize that he's out of ammunition. He didn't just stop shooting, but he actually ran out of ammunition. He's at bolt lock. And I have to know that while running away. Then I have to grow a massive pair of testicles, turn around, run towards him, and tackle him before he reloads. That's the theory you're presenting. But your theory also forgot about something called a New York reload. You're assuming this guy only has 1 gun on him. So anything you tell me about an assault weapon, and they say no one needs to be able to kill anyone that quickly, excuse me. Every single person who pushes that assault weapons ban in Trenton, I guarantee you to a man, has never had someone shooting that. Not one of them has ever had someone shooting at them. Because if they had, and I can guarantee there's not a magazine big enough in the world. Not one. You got a 1,000-round belt. I'm sorry, I wish it was 1,001. That's just the facts. There's not a single person there who knows what it's like to be shot at. And I have no problem going into Trenton and saying that to every one of their faces, and I've done so on multiple occasions. You know what they say to me? Well, how many people do you expect to be shooting at you? You gave 10 rounds. Because no one has ever missed a shot, ever. So immediately when they start with this assault weapons ban nonsense, right? Most of us, some of us not, most of us have seen the video of the shoulder thing that goes up. Does anyone not know what I'm referring to? Everyone knows what I'm talking about, yes? No. Okay. Carolyn McCarthy, does anyone remember who she is? Congresswoman from Long Island, whose entire campaign was, my husband was killed on the subway, right? That was her campaign. My husband was killed in the subway. Oh, and her son, correct. My husband and son were killed in the subway. That was her campaign.
His son survived the shooting.
Oh, he was shot, he was wounded.
Yes.
Okay. So her campaign was, my husband was killed in the subway. That was her campaign. And she ran on a platform of left-wing gun control. 3 years after the federal assault weapons ban ended in 2004. In 2007, she gets on MSNBC, which at the time was still the home of Tucker Carlson. She's pushing the renewal of the assault weapons ban that, quote, George Bush let lapse. Okay, that's because Congress did the research and found out that it didn't make a difference. Having said that, she's pushing it, and just like on here, they're adding a few more features that they want to ban. She was adding a few more features she wanted to ban, and she wanted to ban barrel shrouds. So Tucker goes to her, what's a barrel shroud and why do we need to ban them? Well, I think the point is that this would have banned the other guns that were used by the killer. No. What's a barrel shroud and why do we need to ban them? Well, I'm not saying this is the best bill. No. What is a barrel shroud and why do we need to ban them? Well, do you know what a barrel shroud is? I do not. I believe it is the shoulder thing that goes up. And he just looks at her and goes, no, it isn't. So why do I bring up this video? Everyone who's seen this video knows what I'm talking about. The point is, she's banning something she cannot define. I went to Trenton a couple of years ago. They were banning that 5.7 round that I was talking about. Remember I said they're going to start at the top with your 50 BMG and they're going to start at the bottom with your 5.7 and they're going to meet halfway in the middle at your 30-06. When they were trying to ban that round, first of all, it was already banned at a federal level. It was a specific bimetal core that's designed to penetrate soft armor. Having said that, they decided at first, eventually they amended the bill to be identical to the federal bill. Let's talk about redundancy in government. But the first iteration was, we're gonna ban this bullet, and any bullet with the same ogive. And I went into Trenton and I said to the whole committee, does anyone here know what an ogive is? And I get 8 blank stares. And I said, well, let me define an ogive for you. An ogive is that part of the bullet where the parallel walls that grip the inside of the barrel meet with the arc that comes up to a point. Where the arc hits the line is called an ogive. It's like an angle that includes an arc instead of 2 lines. So you're saying to me that we have to ban not only this bullet, but every bullet with that exact same angle, which could be thousands of different bullets that are already in all of our houses and we don't even know about it because, let's be honest about it, unless you're really deep into hand loading, you don't measure ogive. That's what you're banning. Not just this bullet, but any bullet that even remotely looks like it. Again with the blank stares. Next person to get up has the red Moms Demand Action t-shirt, the pink t-shirt, and she turns to them, literally not 2 minutes after I sat down and goes, I didn't know what an ogive was either. I had to look it up on my cell phone. I'm still not sure I understand it. Pass this bill anyway. Okay. And they all voted to pass the bill, not realizing that by the time it was signed, it had been amended to not include the word ogive, but you know, I don't know what it means, but hell, let's ban it, why not?
And that's gonna be a hell of a fight, fighting the ignorance of the New Jersey politicians, because, and I quote, Loretta Weinberg, we pass laws on things we have no idea about
all the time.
All the time. And you know what? A lot of these, especially Democrat politicians, don't want to be educated. They like being ignorant because then they can be seen as, I'm doing something. Right.
Well, you're right, but just until the end there. It's not that I want to be ignorant because I'm doing something. I can do even more if I'm very, very knowledgeable, right? A doctor can do more medically for you than a layman. So it's not the question of I'm ignorant because I'm doing something. I'm ignorant because I'm proud of the fact that I've never touched a gun. I'm proud of the fact that I don't know anything about guns because I'm not one of them.
Fair point.
On that same stream of videos, there's actual video out there where a news reporter is talking about the destructive capability of an AR-15. They show an AR-15 shooting a pumpkin. It's a shotgun.
No, it's a pump shotgun.
It's a pump shotgun. And I think it's actually a Mossberg of all things. But they're telling people, this is what an AR-15 can do. Look at the destructive capability.
Listen, it's even worse when they're showing a video of a revolver being shot and you see a casing in it.
Oh, the video. It's not a video. It's a cartoon of Donald Trump shooting himself in the foot.
There's actual videos.
There's actual videos?
Yeah.
Because I saw the one with Donald Trump. It was a cartoon. He shoots himself in the foot. The shoe is gone. The foot is immaculate. No blood, nothing. So clearly he's got a bulletproof foot. And you see shells flying out of this revolver.
Yeah. That was in the Simpsons episode. Too.
Yeah.
No, that was the one where they were
put
reloading the magazine into the revolver.
There was a Supergirl episode where they were shooting some kind of special machine gun and the guy was being pushed across the parking lot with it, standing up, you know, like sliding back, and you can see when the bullets are ejecting, it's the whole bullet. It's the whole cartridge, yeah.
Listen, these are the same people who, they go to a gas station and they find a piece of metal on the floor. Now, half the time it's like an Allen wrench. And I've seen people post on Facebook, I found bullets at the gas station, they could have killed kids. And then you look at the
And it's a
picture because you
Phillips.
can't help yourself. And it's the little Phillips head screwdrivers off of your multi-purpose screwdrivers. And you're looking at it, it's like, no, but I think there's a guy who's really pissed off right now trying to assemble a shelf somewhere with his wife yelling at him. Because you've got his Phillips head attachment. That is definitely not a bullet. But this is what we're dealing with. There was even a woman on Facebook who had a hickey on her neck. And this happened in Florida. And she told her husband that people were shooting bullets in the air on New Year's Eve.
The hot bullet, yeah.
Yep. And she got hit by a stray. And it just went right past her neck, that it wasn't a hickey. This guy was all over Facebook demanding that guns be taken off the streets. He should probably maybe put a GPS tracker on his wife and then consult with a physician, but that's a whole other issue.
We've got a bigger issue. We've got a red flag law where you just look at your neighbor the wrong way and they're coming to get you.
That's right.
So, you
I've
know,
already been there and done that.
okay.
I work in New York City, and I had a huge conflict with a coworker. At the end of my shift, I was approached by two NYPD detectives. I worked for a special branch I never even heard of. Now I've seen murders and shootings and stabbings, all kinds of blood and gore in the city over the 30 years I've worked in EMS. So I'm used to detectives coming to me and asking me questions. It's nothing unusual. Then they start asking me how many guns I have, how much ammunition I have, where it's stored, and I'm like, where is this coming from? Yeah. So I tell them what's going on. I tell them I got a grievance with a coworker. Oh, all right, that's probably what it is. Don't worry about it. You know, we'll contact you if we have any other questions. I go home. I get met by, they were very respectful, albeit, but I get met by two Dumont detectives who ask me the same questions. I tell them the same thing. They go away. 5 minutes later, I get a knock on my door. Now they're back with two FBI agents.
Whoa.
For what? Now, had the red flag law been in place in New Jersey already at that time, I would have had my guns gone. I would have had to spend tens of thousands of dollars to go to court because some asshole I work with decided he's going to file a false claim. And what happens to him? Nothing.
And this is becoming incredibly common in the state. As of right now, I think at the last count, we were at 200 red flag cases with little to no evidence. Now, here's the interesting thing about the red flag law. Let's put aside all the lack of constitutionality in the search. This happened in another state. They went to a man's house using the red flag law. They took his guns because his mother suspected that he was going to kill her. That's a whole nother line of problems. We're not going to get into why him and his mother were that close and why he was going to kill her. Anyway, they take his guns. Now he knows the cops are aware he's thinking about killing his mother. So what does he do? The very next day, he gets the kitchen knife and he stabs his mother to death. Because under the red flag laws, they can't arrest you. They can just come to your house and let you know they think you're some kind of psycho and they're taking your guns away. And if you are some kind of psycho, now you know you've got about 24 hours to a week to do whatever horrible thing you wanted to do. Does anybody remember that terrorist with a van in New York? He didn't need a gun. Does anybody
Home
think
Depot
it's
rental
hard to
truck.
make a pipe bomb?
Now reverse that. Woman use a woman for, she buys a gun because she's in fear or whatever. She has a gun for own defense.
And the husband calls
She's
on her.
dating a maniac, crazy boyfriend. He reports her. They take her gun. Now he knows she's unarmed.
Yup,
Comes in and kills her.
absolutely.
Okay?
We
Because
have
of hearsay. No burden of proof. Just a hearsay.
And here's the
No
best
surprise.
example of what he's saying.
You're
because
just
it's
being
happened.
paranoid. There could never be any disgruntled boyfriend. That's
Except
smart.
for the, let's give two great examples. The woman who applied for a carry permit because she was afraid of her ex-husband. The judges told her, you don't need it. A week later, the ex-husband came and killed her.
Listen, Carol Bound, 43 days waiting. 30 days is the law. We protested in front of
Here's how they
Weinberg.
get away with that law. It's 30 days from the time they start the paperwork. So they can have it sitting on their desk for months. The 30 days doesn't start from when they put it into their system. That's the scary part. Because I had to fight with my township on that. I had to fight with gun grabber in chief, Senator Paul Sarlo, who didn't want to issue permits in the town of Woodridge because he's also the mayor. It's a nice double dipping scheme he has. You know how I suddenly got my permit? I threatened to go to the news. I threatened to make it I'm Hispanic. I said, it's going to be a racial issue. All of a sudden, and this was Valentine's Day of last year, I made this call at 8 a.m. By the afternoon, suddenly my permit to purchase a handgun was available. It was like Moses parted the Red Sea when they heard you were going to call the media. You want to hear the funny thing? It's gotten so bad. You know who told me I should file a lawsuit with the state if I didn't get my permit within the next couple of weeks? The state police department. Even they're fed up with what's going on at the local levels. They're getting their hands tied and they're saying, file, call. Whoever you got to call, let them know you're going to file. It's gotten insane. We actually had a woman, and we don't know what the whole situation was, but her in the process of getting divorced husband or already divorced husband, who was a police officer, showed up when her and her boyfriend were doing what they were doing, and now they're both dead. Why? Because neither one of them had a gun. But nobody would have questioned him walking down the street with a sidearm on his hip. So why is it okay for one group of people, but not for the rest of us? We have no right to defend ourselves. We're making special rules for special people. We're creating a special class system in New Jersey. Politicians, law enforcement, lawyers.
Well, the three tiers, as Anthony refers to it, if you know,
Yup.
if you ever hear him say it.
Anthony talks about it all the time, and Anthony has really helped out this group tremendously. Actually, he knows how expensive printing out these resolutions are. So if anybody needs more resolutions, let us know. Anthony has given us permission to come down and use his printer for free to print out as many resolutions as we need to get to you guys. So he's been great about that over at Gun for Hire. But yeah, it happens, and it happens consistently. And there was a situation with a military man who wanted to take his firearm off base. Said he felt that something was going to happen, that he'd been receiving terroristic threats. Judges in New Jersey told him no. A few months later, he turned up dead. Maybe the guy knew what was coming down. Maybe his fear was justified. Why are the judges telling us if we have access to our rights? Who are they?
The politicians do the same thing.
Exactly.
We're supposed to have them to defend ourselves against them.
Police chiefs.
But they're writing the laws
That's right.
against us.
And here's the scarier thing. Why is it in New Jersey we have no say in our judges? In a lot of states, you elect a judge. In New Jersey, the politicians pick your judge. And you think they're going to pick a guy who's not in cahoots with them on their political agenda? So they say it doesn't help to elect a judge, but maybe it does. Because maybe I want a judge who actually gives a little bit of concern about the Constitution, not a judge who only cares what mom's demand action wants to hear. I really don't care what moms demand anything want to hear. Because you're a mom doesn't mean I care about your opinion. I'm sorry. Congratulations, you had a child. I don't even listen to my own mom half the time. I'm not listening to somebody else's mom.
Well, where's moms when the bail reform guy gets out and kills somebody?
They're
The
okay
law
with
they
that because it's
passed,
probably most of their
they're
kids.
full of shit, their organization.
Think about it. Look at how these
Okay.
people are raising children. They're
That's not how
planning on.
Bloomberg pays for it. He doesn't pay for them to do that. Bloomberg pays
It's
for
an
them to fight
agenda,
against
they're
guns.
not an actual group where there's times where 2A people could stand next to them and be outraged that, hey, you just released this
That's
guy.
right.
Why aren't, there's things like that, but unfortunately, they're not a legitimate group that they don't actually care. It's just pass.
Does anybody-
And let's get our picture taken.
Do you know what happens if you show up to court in New York? You get a prize. You might even get Mets tickets. I am desperately trying to figure out what's the smallest law I can
Because
break
nobody
without
wants
getting a
Mets
record to just get the Mets tickets.
Jump the turnstile.
Because I'm a Mets fan.
That's what they were saying.
Is that all I gotta do to get Mets tickets? Because I'm a Mets fan. It's depressing enough that I don't think I
that
should have
would
to
be
pay
a
for
sentence
tickets.
I
as
don't think
opposed
you
to
would-
a reward.
I don't know why you would admit that in front of everybody.
Is a criminal record worth
Why
it?
would you admit that in front of everybody?
That's,
You're a Jets fan too, right?
no, I'm a Giants fan.
Alright, so you got
Such a
some
fan these days.
But I'm also a Devils fan, so the last couple of years haven't been good with most sports.
Excuse me, Al?
Yeah,
It's Al, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I've got some family commitments, and I drove these two gentlemen.
absolutely.
So we all agree with, I think, everything you're saying, and we all hear it, but, basically, vote Mike. Mike, thank you for having us here. Call our congressmen and our representatives and everything like that.
Yep.
Right, fill out these forms, thank you. Read the laws, right, the bills in full, because the titles don't always match, that.
The titles rarely match.
Right. What else can we do?
The next big step,
Obviously, voting is important, right?
voting is
What
incredibly
are your
important.
thoughts? What are your?
So this is gonna be the next big step. In addition to Bergen County, I'm the regional director for a big chunk of our northern area. So I'm gonna be helping out, not just our county here in Bergen, I'm gonna be working with, Morris County, Sussex, Essex, Passaic, and I think that's all of them. So what I'd like everyone to do is to go onto our Facebook page, send us a message with the best way to contact you, whether it's phone number, anything like that. Or if before you leave, Steve will be at that desk. Steve, Darren, I'm losing my mind. Steve unfortunately couldn't be here today. His child's been under the weather, so I'm sure everybody knows how that is. And I think he wanted to, but I think if he left the house right now, we would never see Steve again because his wife would lodge a large object into the back of his head. So we're not gonna do that to him. But Darren's gonna be at the front with a piece of paper and a pen. If you could write down your names, numbers, that way we can get in contact with you, keep you updated as to what's going on. Emails, if you have them, emails are really the best way to get in touch with you. We are gonna be building a database. What our biggest goal is we're gonna end up picking a freeholder meeting. I wanna see about 60 to 100 people at that freeholder meeting. To let little Tommy Sullivan, I mean, not so little, the guy eats way too many pizzas. But to let Tommy Sullivan know, our Second Amendment rights are under attack, and maybe he doesn't give a damn, but we give a damn. And if he wants to keep living on the taxpayer dollar, he better start doing the right thing and defending our rights and not oppressing our rights. So, I understand you guys gotta go, get their information.
Are you part of the ANJRPC also, the Association of New Jersey Rifle Pistol Club?
So that's a separate organization. We're just a separate grassroots organization. We have no connection with anybody else. Our organizations are in every single county. Our Cape May organization actually just had a huge victory where they were able to be involved with the passing of the resolution for Cape May County, which probably caused Phil Murphy to have a whole lot of heartburn, so that's great. And that's what we want. We want to pass these resolutions to drive him nuts.
I think we've gotta, we all gotta get together.
And we're gonna keep
All
doing
these
that.
organizations
We're gonna
do.
keep doing all of that. We wanna start at the county level. Eventually, once we can, we're gonna try to do a state meetup. Or maybe a North Jersey and a South Jersey meetup, because it's kinda hard to get a lot of people out of South Jersey up to the middle, and a lot of people from here down to the middle of the state. I'm guessing the middle would probably be somewhere in Monmouth County. And I'm not gonna say that's Central Jersey, because I'm not starting that debate here. I'm also not gonna talk about Taylor Ham or any of that.
I grew up in Burlington, and I, you know, with
Burlington,
family in
Burlington,
Berlin, and
yep.
I work all through, so I get it, you know. But,
It's a
okay,
hike.
so that's your plans.
That's our plans.
Put our numbers on there.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Keep it up.
And that's everything, everybody.
Well, one
Actually, hang
last
on,
thing I
Mark.
want to add. Politics is downstream from culture. Anyone knows what that means? It's an Andrew Breitbart quote. What that means is, by the time you get into the voting booth, it's really already too late. We all have that one liberal friend, coworker, relative, if you're like me, it's a lot of them, who will go on at length about whatever the issue du jour is today, and God knows, the issue they picked today is 10 times as crazy as the one they picked yesterday, ad nauseum. They will talk about it to no end and just assume everyone in the room agrees with them. And the one guy who talks out, well, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, just walk up to them and just argue the shit out of it. Loudly. But that's considered chutzpah. You're right, it is. But it was chutzpah for him to start, and you're just bringing it home. Okay? You want to let the other guys in the room hear how much of an idiot this is. Right? Ben Shapiro says, never debate a liberal unless you can mop the floor with his face in public so that the people watching realize how stupid he is. There's no reason to debate him one-on-one because you're not changing anyone's mind. When it's one-on-one with 50 people, so that's something else. So talk about it. Talk about it. I'm not going to say talk about it at work because some of us work in those places where we'd get fired if we did. Everywhere outside of work. When you go to church, when you go to the supermarket, when you're in line at the supermarket, on the phone, talking to your buddy Al or your buddy Ed, and everyone else in line is giving you a dirty look, except for the one guy 3 aisles over, and he gives you a little wink. Let that guy know. He's not the only one.
But come to the table, you have to also come to the table with more than my Second Amendment.
Oh, 100%.
Come with some
100%.
facts, but have a conversation, and then you're not gonna win some over and say, okay, we agree to disagree. But I put out the facts. You can't
100%.
just say, it's our Second Amendment.
You have to put out facts.
Come out with something other than.
And here's the thing.
You know,
The
and
facts
that's a big problem with
happens
some
to
of
be the facts are on our side. But what they'll try to do, and especially when they realize that the facts are not on their side, they will try to turn it into a shouting match, a name-calling match. You know, how many times we've all been called Nazi online, right? I immediately put that shit to bed.
It's really
You're
funny
right,
when they call him.
because I am the only Orthodox Jewish IDF infantry veteran to join the National Socialist Party. Fuck with me.
Well, you know, another thing, a family friend who is not necessarily a gun person, but she wanted support in First Amendment with the no vaccinations. And I talked to her and I said, listen, I don't care if you vaccinate your kid or not, that's not my business. But it's an attack on your First Amendment. We're being attacked on our Second Amendment. It's not the actual subject, it's the actual amendments that are being attacked.
Yep.
And I have her now, my wife thinks I'm crazy because she used to be a Democrat. And, you know, it's
A lot of
funny
people used to
because-
be Democrats.
Yeah, it's funny because she actually, she had a commitment. She was actually gonna come tonight, but she couldn't make it. Her kid had a dance recital or something. But if you can get other people whose other amendments are being attacked, it's about the Constitution, not just the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fifth, the 14th, all of them. And once one starts going, the rest of them can go. Like you said, if you don't have the Second Amendment, you don't have any amendments.
Amendments under the guise of, you know, under the heading of Second Amendment, but it's not just about the Second Amendment, because where does it stop? You know, if you're gonna practice illegal search and seizure under red flag laws, you know, what's next? You know, how are you gonna practice it next?
I don't agree with your Second Amendment, but I don't agree with your First Amendment, and I don't agree with your Fourth Amendment, and so.
We're already
it's-
stepping on the
It's our
second.
amendments, it's
They're
our
just
rights.
emboldened by
It's we the people,
nothing
not you the
happening.
politicians.
Well,
you can-
And people
you
have
can
to understand that.
A
Come
lot.
on board.
Once they take the second, they can come after everything. Once you don't have a gun, what does the Fourth Amendment mean anymore? They know you don't have a gun, they're kicking down your door.
Keep this in mind also, I think a lot of people, well, what is the NRA doing? What are you doing?
That's it.
That's it, it comes down to what are you doing?
Exactly.
Offer to take somebody to the range. Introduce them to something, have a conversation. Stop relying on the big groups. They're not, the NRA isn't coming to the state because of other reasons. Because of, well, I'll just put it out there. The state organization doesn't want them here, okay? We have great attorneys in this state. They make a fortune off of your misfortune.
Yep.
Follow the money. But what are you doing? Stop looking at the big group.
Exactly.
You have to, it starts at the grass level. And that's us.
And that's
Do something, introduce somebody, take them to the range. Don't put a cannon in their hand, make it fun. Make them wanna come back.
And if we can
Okay.
make an anti into a neutral, we won.
It's true.
Guys, the two guns I love having a new guy use, especially a woman, a simple 9mm if they want to use a handgun, or a 22 long rifle. You can have a kid at a range with a 22 long rifle and teach them the safety concepts of a rifle. You can teach them the respect for a firearm. Because if you teach, and they've already proven this, there was a study done where they had a group of kids in a room and they put a fake gun in the room. Some of the kids went through the NRA Eagle class. Some of the kids just had parents who themselves taught them about firearms. And then a big group of the kids had very, very anti-firearm parents. Guess which kids all ran and started touching the gun and pointing and shooting at each other? Not a single kid who did the Eagle class or had a parent who taught them picked up the gun and pointed it. One kid touched it and went like this, oh crap, that's a real gun. And he starts looking around. This kid goes like this, he picked it up for a half a second, realized it was heavy enough to be a real gun. This is a 6-year-old we're talking about. Puts it right down, and he looks petrified. He's looking around, trying to figure out whose gun this is and why it's on the table.
I have my son, he is now 13. He's my hunter partner. He started shooting when he's 9. I trust him with a handgun like myself. Also, as another example, I got he's my neighbor actually, my friend. A couple of years ago, he was petrified to grab a gun, a firearm. Now, he can speak by himself.
Yeah, I teach him about firearms now. So, and the same thing I do for others. So one of the ways that I start a conversation is by picking any topic. Today, any topic will lead you right into Second Amendment. So I think staying relevant with information today is going to, it's going to take you to any topic. And if you're able to talk on that topic, you're building rapport with that person. Now, when you start talking about firearms, they're going to look at you like you have, 2 or 3 heads, and then just offer them to come with you to the range. If they do, what I say is, if you come the first time, you're going to want to come back because of the adrenaline, and then you start, and they're gonna ask you to come with them to the range, and that's how I do.
The last thing you'll probably hear is you'll hear from a few of the anti-gunners who are religious. Oh, it's wrong. Well, if you're Christian, you can remind them, Jesus said sell your cloak and buy a sword if you don't have one. The Bible's full of comments on self-defense, and Marcus here will tell you a whole host of reasons in the Old, as we call it, the Old Testament. And he's had the argument with probably, every rabbi in the state by now, about self-defense and how throwing axes is not a viable self-defense.
Well, that's a different issue. There is a large movement of left-wing clergy who try to push gun control. There was a guy, it was somewhere up 17, Malwa Ramsey area, who his father was killed in Chicago 30 years ago, and since then he's been very anti-gun. He made a thing where they wanted to go to one of the fanciest, most expensive gun stores they can find, so they went to the Beretta Gallery in Manhattan. And then they realized, we're in the wrong spot. They don't have any AR-15s in here. Hey, here's $300,000 for a pair of side-by-sides. Hey, there's $20,000 for an over-under. Yeah, I don't think that the criminals are getting their guns here. So they actually took a trip to Austria, and we all know what's in Austria. And they basically said, you guys sell Glocks and they're used all over, these crimes all over America. And they're like, yeah, so what does that have to do with us? We're not in America. You want us to affect your laws? You live there and you can't affect your law. It was basically their way of saying, hey, take a hike. Having said that, we've got Crying Brian, who actually lives in Philadelphia, although he claims he lives in New Jersey, who is the head of a thing called Heeding God's Call. Now, I don't know what God he worships, but he does not worship my God. My God is the God who taught Moses that he was actually a Jew and not an Egyptian. And Moses goes out of the palace one day, not long after finding out that he's a Jew, and he sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating on a Jewish slave. And things that Moses did not do. He did not immediately run to the legislature. He did not set up a commission to look into the root causes of Egyptian anti-Semitism. He did not, picket outside of someone's house. He did beat the Egyptian to death and bury him in the sand. So, and I could go for an hour, just one example after another. Anyone who tells you that God is anti-gun, God is anti-self-defense. I heard a woman when I went up to Connecticut, because I don't just stick to Jersey. I'll drive if I know that there's an event going down. When Connecticut passed their assault weapons ban back in 2013, I drove up to Connecticut, and we're waiting online because they installed metal detectors specifically for that day to get into the State House. And the woman in front of me was anti-gun, and I'm talking to her, and I said, God forbid someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night. What are you gonna do about it? And she goes, shit you not. She says, I would rather go to heaven knowing I hadn't killed anybody. Her God is very different than my God. My God says, the exact words are, v'chai b'hem, live by them. What does live by them? You must live. That is a commandment by God. You must live. You must do everything you possibly can to protect your own life, whether that's from disease, whether that's from someone trying to kill you, whether people ask me, if you were on a desert island and the only thing there was a pig, roast that bitch up. Because you must live. That is rule number one, you must live.
Well, that's pretty much the end of it, guys. We're going to be here to answer any questions. I see a question in the back before we end.
Just two comments
Yeah.
when I talk to people. One is, and I read this in the NRA Journal, I'm not 100% certain it's true, but I think it is, that licensed gun owners commit the fewest crimes, even less than police. And when you tell that to people, they're like astounded because they think all of us are going around shooting up schools. So nobody gets it that licensed gun owners commit less crimes than even police.
That's
I'm
true,
not
but to be
100%
fair to the
certain,
police, there's a PTSD issue associated with a lot of their
I
crimes.
mean, this is not an anti-police thing, I'm just using them as an example,
Gotcha.
because most people think the police obviously are law-abiding. And the second thing I tell people is, can you make anything illegal? And they go like, what do you mean? I say, well, from 1920 to 1933, we had prohibition. Didn't work for alcohol.
That's right.
Drugs have been illegal for, I don't know how many years, maybe 50 or more, you can go back. But anyway, at least 50 years. You can buy drugs on any street in America. I say, gambling, prostitution, whatever, you really can't make anything illegal. I said, you can pass a law saying guns are gonna be illegal. I said, there'll still be plenty of them around.
Yep.
So those are two things that people don't really sort of think about.
And they are forgetting that technology has changed to a point where you can get a 3D printer, and if you have a little bit of skill with welding and iron, you're probably going to start making guns in your garage. They actually already caught a leader of a motorcycle gang who's not allowed to have a gun, building shotguns in his garage. Well, I guess that whole anti-gun thing for him worked out really well. Not only did he have guns, he was supplying the entire gang and the guys they sold the guns to with his home-made shotguns.
I want to make sure I understand this. You can make a gun?
You can make a gun. It gets even crazier.
Wait a second, wait.
Bullets.
People make guns?
People make-
I'm very
You
unfamiliar
can
with
sell them
this.
at gun buybacks.
You know what's even...
I'm
I'm
very unfamiliar with this whole concept of making guns. Can you do me a favor, explain it to me? Making
I wouldn't
guns?
know.
So it's a secret. My grandfather told me because he was a gunsmith, but he told me we had to keep it a secret. We can't let people know that they don't come out of a magic machine. But you can make a gun. And I think everybody here knows that guy who wants to be cheap and do his own bullets. Now, I'm not saying that it's all about money, But I'm saying I'm probably not smart enough to figure out the right gunpowder. I'm also more concerned with the looks I'd get from my wife over there if I showed up with a press and a mill and started buying gunpowder and wanting to use the oven to melt down the old shells. She's gonna get really angry really fast, and I'm not gonna need a gun anymore because I'm not gonna be able to walk, because I'm gonna be in intensive care. But I do know guys who mostly aren't married who make their own bullets, and it's really cool. And a lot of them are making bullets better than anything we're buying. So this whole fear of, hey, we're gonna take away guns and then you won't have them? Yeah, no, we're probably gonna end up with a guy selling rocket launchers on the streets because they took away pot, and all of a sudden, next thing you knew, crystal meth was on the streets. Here's the scary thing. They took away a couple of drugs, and now we have hundreds of drugs. If you take away one thing, somehow it turns into a gremlin. It multiplies. It's like you threw water on it and fed it at midnight. It's gonna turn into all kinds of scary, horrible monsters.
Speaking of scary, horrible monsters, it's really interesting where you've got hundreds upon hundreds of firearms laws, and if you or me or him just happens to be driving along and okay, there's a spent shell casing in the car, they'll try to throw the book at you.
Yup.
But having worked in Essex County for 15 years, I can fat ass guarantee you every violent gangbanger that has come through there either has gun charges dropped or pled down to the point where you might as well not have had the gun law to begin with. There was the case of a guy who was busted in Edgewater for illegal firearms trafficking. Had 11, got caught with 11 weapons. Now, if you go by the federal law, this guy should be getting out of jail when Captain Kirk's USS Enterprise launches in like the 2200s.
The guy from Texas, right?
Believe so, yes.
Yeah. He was running drugs and guns.
Yep.
And they dropped the gun
Oh,
charges.
that's 2 of the 3 food groups.
Yeah. But they pled down, they dropped the gun charges and charged him with a
Anyone
smaller
who knows
drug
anything
crime,
about criminal
and he didn't even
enterprises-
do 2 years.
The 3 food groups are guns, drugs, and money.
Yeah.
And the federal gun trafficking people that I have heard of that were like out of Chicago, you know what they got? It was a huge stiff sentence. A year's worth of probation. Yet every politician will say, we need more to gun laws, we need tougher gun laws. You can't even enforce the ones that are on the books.
My 13th round is the problem.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're gonna end it there. We want you all to network with each other, hang out a little bit, have a couple of drinks.
I really
Yeah.
just have one quick
All right,
thing.
one quick thing.
Tricia Flanagan is running against Cory Booker this year. She wants to attend your next event.